Welcome to Pocket Woman Lockpicking and Lock Sport. Today, something a little bit different. Today we're going to be talking timber. Now, a fellow Aussie butcher's block had some questions on his making picks video about the timber that he used and what it may be, what it might not be, why it was so different to the rest, that kind of thing. So I've dug into the shed and I've pulled out some timber that I've had in the shed for 25 years, some timber that's been out in the weather for just as long, and another piece of interesting timber that you might like to have a look at. So our first timber we're going to look at is Jarrah. Jarrah is an Australian timber. It's a hardwood, which means it's quite dense. It is a strong timber. Now the grain on Jarrah is, these are dusty as, but you can see the grain on Jarrah is very tight, very close together. There's a pointy tool. All these lines are the grain, very close together. That's the end grain. It's black because that's what it when it was cut. That's the grain on the side. And as you can see, it's very pink, it's very red. Now this timber comes in different shades. Now this is a very dark, deep red. Now this piece of timber is just over the size of my hand, and it is very weighty, probably weighs about 1 kilo and a bit. It is that heavy. It's one of the ways you can tell the difference between your hardwoods and your softwoods. Most of them in Australia, the hardwoods are a lot heavier than the softwoods. So that's one piece of Jarrah. Here's another piece. It's a bit smaller. And there's your grain. Once again, the lines very close together, nice and straight, all going up and down. Now, this has a nice shine to it. When this is sanded up, it comes up beautiful. But as you can see, been in the shed, there's two different colours here. So this is a really deep red and this is a lighter red. Still the same timber. Now these two pieces, these have been out in the weather. Still Jarrah, they're not planed up, but still that grain, nice and long fibres and heavy. These are just two pieces, probably about 400 long, and they're quite weighty. But once again, another shade of colour. Got one more. Now this piece of Jarrah will explain why butcher you had two different shades of colour on your pick, but it was the same timber. It's because it was cut through the middle of the tree, and in the middle of the tree it's called the pith, and in the middle of the tree, that pith is a dead section. All these other fibres are alive. All those capillaries are shooting up water and nutrients, but the centre of the tree actually does die off. As you can see, this is the pith. So nice and dark on this side, lighter as you get to the centre of the tree, moving out from the centre of the tree, nice and dark again. In the centre of the tree, you'll often get this because it has died off. So that's why you can get such very light coloured Jarrah next to very dark coloured Jarrah, or if someone cuts just that section, you'll just end up with very light Jarrah. It's the pith, it's the centre of the tree. And on this side, you can't see it because it was the outer side of the centre of the tree. This is the dead centre of the tree. And a few centimetres away, it's just pure dark red. So that's that one. So as you can see, once again, we're still coming up with separate colours. All the one timber. Now this piece of Jarrah, it's heaps thinner. It has been weathered. It has been out in the weather forever. Still the long fibres. They've opened up because of the weather. They've expanded and stuff, but it is still the Jarrah. Nice and heavy. This thin piece is quite heavy, and it has greyed up. So that is just the outside of the timber. If this was sanded down, it would come back to a nice red colour. So the other timber you had there, to me, it looked like it was Tasmanian oak. Now Tassie oak, this is it. As you can see, quite a different colour to the Jarrah. However, if you compare it to the pith, the centre, it can be mistaken for Jarrah. The Jarrah can be mistaken for the Tasmanian oak. Now the oak is a hardwood, once again, very dense, very heavy, and the fibres all elongated, all long stretches, but a different weight, a different heaviness to the Jarrah. Now one way to tell the difference between Jarrah and Tassie oak, apart from the colour and the grain, how the grain runs, because all the fibres are different, they'll all run different, is when you're working with Tassie oak, you get this black stuff on your fingers. Now that black stuff is tannin released by the timber. So you'll always get that black stuff, and you'll know that you're working. This has been caught some water in my shed, but look at that grain. Yep. So that's your Tassie oak. So also with your Tassie oak, there's a solid piece. It's got a super nice shine on it, and this has just been dressed, so it's just been plain. It hasn't even been sanded, yet it doesn't even look like it needs sanding. But look at that grain. But you will get some of these waves in it, which is where a tree knot was. But you'll still get the elongated fibres running through. Still nice and heavy. That's Tassie oak. Now, try not to stab myself with all the timbers here. This is another piece of Tassie oak. Once it's been wet, once it's been weathered, it will go a little bit darker, but you sand it back and it will come back to that nice light colour. But you'll know, working with it, you'll get black fingers. So the other timber that I wanted to show you, that's really nice, that is also a hardwood, but it is a very light hardwood, like super light, and that is this. Have a look at this. Look at the grain. Look at the fibres. long but separated, but dark, dark, dark. Yep. Even these ones, dark, dark, dark. Really long running fibres, which is what you want, nice straight long ones when you're working with timber, but you get this dark lines. Now what that is, this is oak. Oregon, not oak. This is Oregon. It's reddish. The fibres, the lines are reddish, but the rest of the timber is quite light in colour, but also light in feel. But this is a structural hardwood used in fascia boards and stuff in houses. It's rated F5. So yeah, hardwoods can actually be light in weight, but that is also a beautiful timber. Comes up beautiful if you were to use it for scales, because it is nice and light but nice and strong and really nice to work with. The advantage of having long grain like this is it's easy to work with. You can plane it and it comes off sweet. You can sand it and the fibres run nice. You're not going like this or anything with it. And then, jabbing in, stabbing. Now the other timber I wanted to show you is this. Now this is pine. A lot of pine we get here in Australia it's called radiata pine. Now this isn't radiata pine. This is another type of pine. Oh, I can't remember its name. But it is different because look at these elongated, tight, close together grain. This sort of pine comes from overseas in packaging and stuff. I scored that from a dishwasher that was imported. Now, this is the pine you're used to seeing. Look at that grain. Huge separation and wavy, not long straight fibres. So that is your standard radiata pine that you get anywhere that you can build with. The other piece of timber I want to show you is something I came across in my travels years ago, and I just went wow and fell in love with it straight away. But I had to score it from the bush, so I got it from dead stuff off the ground, and then I had to take it back to the campsite and cut it up into manageable pieces. Well, I tell you what, it is the hardest timber to cut. A power saw was struggling to cut it. And what I'm talking about, it's something called ironwood. We only get this in certain parts of Australia, and that's the tree. So if you see a tree like that, it's sort of grabby, flaky, but it's like this, nice and shiny, and you've got these red bits and black bits, red and black, running through it. But this is the bark. This is the one with the bark on it. Let's see if we can go in closer. So see how it's rough? So these are the telltale signs that you've come across an iron bark, and they're usually quite thin trees, but you get them big, straight, tall ones. You can hug them, the width of your widest hug. Very slow growing and as hard as cement to cut, and the bark is like this. And look at this colour. The depth of colour is gorgeous. Have a look. So this is the outer bark. This is the bark area, this light colour. This dark, hard centre is your have a look at how dark that goes, and it comes up really red when you sand it. It is just beautiful. So you get these colours coming through your timbers. Here's another piece. And this black is the burn that the power tool did trying to cut through this. And these are just, you know, the size of double width of your thumb. That's all these are. But absolutely gorgeous timber. Here's a bigger piece. Have a look at that. See how flaky, you see, you got the bark, you can tell it does these little curl things. So if you ever come across this in the Aussie bush, you see some bits on the ground, pick it up and bring it home. It is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And heavy as. These pieces would be heavier than this piece. And that is heaps smaller. It is so dense. Now here is a piece of that ironwood that has been really weathered. So those other pieces were newly dropped limbs. This had been on the ground for a while. This probably weighs, this small piece probably weighs about 5 kilos. You could do your weights with them. It is that dense, that heavy. So all this grey comes away and you're left with this beautiful red, deep red black timber. I don't know if I can show you this end. It is just gorgeous. So the last bit of timber I want to show you is this one here. It has been out in the weather. It came off a house. It was painted yellow years and about 20 odd years ago. I went to a demolition of a house and took it off. Now this is very, very light but very strong. Once again, the grain nice and close together, nice and tight, really long, but you get these waves in it. This is cedar. Carcinogenic to work with, you've got to be masked up. But it is a beautiful, beautiful timber. And this comes up a nice orangey red colour as well. Very, very nice. Well, so there you have it. Can come in all colours. Same timber. Hope this answers your question, Butcher. I think you've got Jarrah with the pith that's making it look like it's Tassie Oak. If it's all the one, if you got it all from the one place and stuff, it's all the one timber. Yeah? Thanks for watching, everyone. Stay legal. Temptation is everywhere.